Mankind knew that they cannot change society. So instead of reflecting on themselves, they blamed the beasts. Heaven or hell.
Hey everybody, I am here with Daniel Bloodworth to talk about a game that I am very excited for. Blood is kind of getting thrown into the deep end here, so I imagine this will be a lot of me talking and just kind of rambling off my opinions about the Guilty Gear Strive, the most recent open beta that has happened. And I've played to varying degrees.
Betas,
yeah, well, there was a network test, and there was another beta, and then this beta, if I recall correctly. And so I feel like at this point I've played a fair amount of Strive, and so I feel, relatively confident in my opinions, and I have quite a lot to say. And it's interesting, Blood, because on our most recent Q&A, you talked about wishing, that like you had the capacity for fighting games, essentially. And I'm not saying that as an insult. It's just that it's hard. It's hard to do. It's like mentally and emotionally draining to really get into fighting games. And to counter that problem, you've seen different developers, including Arc System Works, try different things, right? And so like a big thing that Arc System Works especially has been a component of doing, like in Grand Blue Fantasy Versus or in Dragon Ball Fighters, is auto combos, where it's like if you just mash light punch, you'll do a combo and do a super kind of a thing. And while on paper I can see why that is appealing, and it is fun to do, right? It's fun to mash. It doesn't work out in practice because it doesn't really teach the player anything. Like, you don't know why these moves are linking together or what properties are going into it. Like, you're just sort of doing it without understanding why. And so I don't think it's been a very effective tool for getting people to understand why things are happening, like why things are connecting, why you're being punished in certain situations, and that sort of thing. So I don't think it's a good tool, and I think the approach that Guilty Gear Strive is taking is a lot more effective. And I feel like like I'm kind of right in the pocket of where I want to be with Guilty Gear Strive, where they've definitely simplified it, they've streamlined it, but I think they're doing it largely in ways that make sense or in ways that I can appreciate. Because I want to say out of the gate, I think this is the most fun that I've had with a fighting game, and there have been good ones, but I think this is the most fun I've had with a fighting game since Tekken 7. Because it when I say like right in the pocket, Blood, what I mean is I can pick a character that I really don't have any previous experience with, right? Like Ino is a good example. I was really excited to check out Ino because she was part of this beta, so you could play as the whole roster in this beta, which is really exciting. And I was like, oh, they added Ino and Anji. I really want to check out Ino, and I just ended up playing the whole beta with her because she was so much fun in a way that I wasn't expecting. I tried out Ino and Xrd, and I just didn't like it. I just didn't like her. I thought she was too complicated. I just didn't really like her playstyle. She just didn't click with me. But in Strive, right, so some of her specials, like Stroke the Big Tree and Chemical Love, they've turned them from half circle motions into quarter circle motions. And I think just that change alone, right, like there's still complexity to this character. There's still, routes that you could figure out with combos. But that change, I think, has made it a lot more fun to engage with. Whereas, like, with Strive, I can go into training mode with a new character, figure some things out, and have that wonderful training mode process of, like, I wonder if this connects into this, or I wonder if this works. And you find out yes, right? And that kind of discovery is exciting. That's still there. But I don't feel like you have to grind hours and hours and hours and hours just to pick up a character. I think if you have like some sort of baseline for fighting games, right, you kind of understand on some level the nuts and bolts that make them work. I think Strive is simplified enough where you can try a new character and kind of immediately get what's going on, which is really fun.
Yeah, I think it's really good for fighting games to try to like share inputs as much as possible. I think that's one of the reasons that Smash is so successful beyond the general fighting game scene, right? Because you know the inputs for all of the different characters. It's just a matter of understanding what those moves actually do and when they're advantageous.
Right. And Smash is a really good example that you bring up because like Smash is not a hard game to play. Like it is truly, I've done this throughout my life. It is a game that you can show to anybody, and on some level they can have fun, right? Because they can at least do the moves. But if you play against somebody that's like hardcore in Smash, that's like dedicated to their life, they'll destroy you, right? So there is some sort of skill ceiling there, and that's absolutely present in Strive. I think the thing, in terms of learning Strive, I think the thing that I don't understand why they're taking this approach, especially when you compare it to like Xrd Rev 2, is the tutorial is terrible. And their defense for the tutorial is like, we don't want to overwhelm players with too many things. And that can definitely be overwhelming when you're learning fighting games. Like more so than any other genre, like you need a glossary of terms for fighting games because a lot of it is very important and a lot of it carries over from game to game. But there are mechanics fundamental to Guilty Gear that the tutorial just doesn't cover, right? It just doesn't mention Roman cancel at all. And it's like, this is a foundation that this game is built on, that is like that is a special thing to this game that it needs. Because I was watching a Twitch stream, I was watching somebody play the Strive beta, and there was a guy in chat, he was just like, yeah, I still don't understand what a Roman cancel is. And I think that's kind of the weird thing where, like, if you've played Guilty Gear before or you've, at least invested a fair amount of time into fighting games before, I do think Strive is very approachable and very fun very quickly. But at the same time, if you're an absolute beginner, I'm not sure that it does quite enough to get you there. Obviously, there are an abundance of resources online and that sort of thing. But I think in the game itself, it's weirdly lacking, especially considering how thorough the tutorial was in Xrd Rev 2. It does have a bunch of things that I do like, though. So the command list, Blood, going through every single move, right? So going through like command normals and special moves and supers and all that stuff, it will explicitly tell you this is the use for this thing. Like, oh, it has a fast startup, or like, oh, it's invincible. It has an invincible startup, or this is a good anti-air. So it will try to very quickly tell you this is the situation that you want to use this move in.
Got it.
And not only will it tell you the situation that like you should use this move in, it will have a short video that demonstrates the move. So like that saves the time of like you seeing the move, having to close the menu, do the move, open the menu back up, right? And so it's it's like streamlined in a way that makes total sense.
Yeah, and I think that's really, important too, because I think, anyone that's tried to get into a fighting game, you kind of had that weird wall of, okay, I've been in training and I practice a lot and I think I've figured out all the moves, and then you get into a match and like it just just empties out of your head. Like you just end up, not doing something or just doing one move over and over because it's the only thing that you manage to remember.
Right. Yeah, and kind of bouncing off that point, Blood, it can definitely feel that way in a lot of fighting games. And I mean, it's still present here. I think any fighting game, that terrible feeling, I had to go through this I've gone through this on stream before, where it's like, yeah, I could definitely do that in training mode, and these 5 matches I couldn't make it happen. Like that's kind of a universal thing. But I think what's kind of cool about Strive is I feel like it really rewards you for fundamentals. And what I mean by that is like, if you're trying to play as smart as possible, right? Like trying to bait opponents into doing something or punishing them for like abusing the same thing, you get a lot of damage. And you may even get like a wall break, which will do an insane amount of damage. And so I feel like you don't have to be at like this absolute top, I'm executing the most optimal combos, I feel like, to really feel like you're doing something. It's just like paying attention in the match and learning in that match will give you like a huge result. So like playing Eno, there were two moments that I kind of want to point out. One was like, oh, this person doesn't know that this attack is a low, and I was able to blow them up in like seconds just using that information. Or I was facing a character or a player that was using Nagoriyuki, and I didn't know how to deal with this stomp attack that was just wrecking me, and they were just spamming it over and over. But we kept rematching each other, and this is something that they added from the previous beta, is now you can rematch opponents, which is
Nice.
essential, of course. But I figured out, the gap that I could punish them, basically, for spamming this move over and over, and I was able to capitalize on that and just learning their patterns, right? So it's like fundamental fighting game mind stuff that I think is so much fun to dig into, and definitely not optimal, not like I've been in the lab for hours and hours and hours kind of stuff, but just like kind of the excitement of, oh, this is how this specific player functions. I'm going to try to study them and try to exploit that, which is great. And a big part of that is the net code for this game is godly. Like,
Yeah,
Yeah.
because they delayed it, right?
Right.
Because the last beta they wanted to work on things.
right. Well, there's a lot to get into here. So specifically talking about like when you're in the match, it probably has the best netcode of any fighting game I've ever played. And it made me realize, like, boy, you really have to put up with a lot of shit. Because, like, inevitably, when you're playing so many fighting games, you'll have that moment where it'll lag or it'll mess something up. And I feel like fighting games just require such split-second decisions that when you lag even just a little bit, it takes your mind off the match, which needs your full
Right.
attention, and you're thinking about like, oh, will that happen again? Will I drop this combo, or will they teleport and hit me? Or like your brain just instinctively goes to another place. But here, outside of a few times where the match just like completely disconnected, which we'll get into, it was like I was playing somebody on the couch. Like I pretty much never had to think about it. I could exclusively focus on the match and what was going on, and that just that does so much because it just makes it easier for you to learn, right? Like
Yeah.
you can just convert more of your brain power to what really matters, which is great. So I want to commend them for that, and then I want to slap them in the face because you're right, Blood. They did say that they delayed it to improve the network, essentially. And as much as I love this game, it is also a complete mess. Because actually getting into a match is a pain. The lobby system is like it's so incredibly dumb, and it being dumb is fine, but it doesn't work. And it just seems like people have been complaining about the lobby since the beginning, and it's not getting any better. And in some ways, I feel like it's almost getting worse because you have these battle stations, and you go up and you click on the battle station, and it's like it may not even register that you're trying to queue up for a fight, right? So you have these little avatar characters in this little like floor that you're on, and it's cute, right? But one, you go up to a battle station and it may not even register that you want to use that battle station, and then somebody will come up and they'll challenge you, or you'll go to a battle station and challenge somebody else, and I feel like there's like a 1 in 5 chance that you'll actually get into a match. Now, when you're in the match, it's great and it works fantastically, but you run into so many awkward moments where like, oh, okay, I see their avatars are telling me that their battle just finished. I'll try to get in. Oh, it's not working. And it's just like, it's that very deflating feeling of, I don't know why this isn't working, because
Yeah.
it's not really communicating to me effectively what specifically is going on. And there is an option, there's a quick match option where you can be in training mode, and it'll just be like, okay, yeah, a match is ready for you while you're doing training mode. And in theory, you're like, okay, that's the way to do it. Like, I could just bypass this whole system. But I would do quick match, and then I just wouldn't get matches. It would be like, I know a lot of people are playing, like, why am I not queuing into people? And then you just spend so long waiting that you're like, I guess I'll just brave the lobby system. And
Right.
so, even the theoretical workaround isn't really working. which sucks. The thing that I will say, and I do think it is a very good idea, is the way sort of online ranked works is you're in this tower, right? And there's different floors, and the number of floor that you're on indicates your skill level. So as you progress, you're fighting tougher and tougher opponents. And I think the flavor that they use to contextualize it is really, really appealing, because you'll have this little guy, like you'll get up to a floor, right? And that'll be like kind of a good rank up feeling moment. And he's like, hey, yeah, you're better than average now. Like, you're really good. And so I think that little flavor text kind of cements the pride that you have in that moment. But also, like, at the top floor is called heaven. And so just the idea that you're, like, battling to get into heaven to fight fighting game gods is, I think, like, a fun goal to work around it. It's not just like your standard ranking system, right? It's not just like, oh, I'm a gold player, I'm a bronze player, whatever. It's like seeing Guilty Gear players like, oh, like on this stream, like, I'm going to try to get into heaven. I think definitely gives it a lot of personality. And I will say, in my experience, whether going up floors or going down floors, I pretty much always felt like it was spot on. Like, there would be times where I'd fight somebody and it's like, oh, they're a little bit better than me, or they're a little bit worse than me. But in terms of playing against people of your same skill, I think it does a pretty exceptional job. Like,
Nice.
I didn't really run into matches where it was like, this is one-sided one way or the other. Like, there's it feels like both of us have a pretty fair chance of coming out on top. And I do like that, because it makes you want to just immediately get into the next match, which is great, except the lobby system is so fucked that it prevents you from doing that. And so I really do think that is kind of the one thing that is greatly holding this game back. And I think it's really important because, the month of launch, right, the month Guilty Gear Strive comes out, I think people are so hungry for a new fighting game that, like, it's going to be easy to get matches, right? But I'm worried that the drop-off of players is going to be accelerated because of how much of a pain in the ass it is to get into games. Like, I do think that is a really important part of keeping players around, because Dead by Daylight, not a fighting game that I was obsessed with, a game that I played, for hours on end every day. I eventually gave it up because it's like, it's taking me 10 minutes, 20 minutes to find a game. Once I ranked up, it's like I can't get into games anymore.
Interesting.
And that's just not fun. That'll make you drop the game because you're wasting so much time literally not doing anything. And so I hope that's not a problem here. But yeah, Blood, thank you for letting me ramble on about Strive. Very excited for the game. Hope some of these things can get ironed out. We'll see.
Yeah, I'll be curious to check out, watch your footage.
Yeah. Thank you so much for listening. And audience, thank you for watching.
Slap. Duel 2. Let's rock. Counter.